Hey guys, welcome back to the Daily Departure. I just got home from a 3-day trip and I wanted to tell you guys about it. I should have vlogged on this trip, but I know I'm the worst about vlogging trips. I just forget to film or I just don't have time to edit. So I'm trying it on my phone today and I think it's gonna be easier to edit if I'm filming on my phone instead of my GoPro. But this trip was a good one, so I want to share my little story time about just how chaotic flight attendant schedules can be. Things first, I am home right now. It's 4 p.m. I was supposed to get home at 9 p.m. So kind of ended up being like a really chaotic trip, but worked out for the best because I ended up getting home early, so I'll take that as a win. Okay, so this trip started on Friday and it was supposed to be a 1-2-1. So one leg the first day, we were going from Chicago to Fort Myers, and as I was walking to the train, I was thinking about how it's so funny when you show up to work a trip, and I got caught up by my Alexa. You show up to work a trip and it's on your schedule as is, but you don't know what's gonna happen, what could go wrong, where you might end up instead of where you're supposed to be. And so I get to work. We got delayed just a little bit because our pilots were running late, but we were only 20 minutes delayed. We get into Fort Myers, it's midnight, I go to bed, I wake up, I work out. As I'm in the gym, I get a text message that our flight to Charlotte, so from Fort Myers to Charlotte, gets delayed an hour. So we changed our van time to be an hour later, and then when we're walking to the van, my crew and I are chatting about how we got delayed, and we're watch it be a delay longer than an hour now that we're actually headed to the airport, because that always seems to happen. So later on in that day, we were supposed to go from Fort Myers to Charlotte and then Charlotte to San Diego. As we're getting into the van, one of the flight attendants goes, "Oh, we're not going to San Diego." And I was like, "Oh, is there another schedule change? They took us off that leg? What happened?" And he's like, No. We're not going to San Diego. I'm just calling it right now. I'm speaking that into existence, type of joke. My crew and I started joking about manifesting. So we're okay, we're manifesting that we are not going to San Diego tonight. Well, lo and behold, we get to the airport and we walk to the gate and there's no plane and everyone's just kind of chaotic. Well, Fort Myers in general is falling apart. Spirit and JetBlue flights and American flights are all delayed and or canceling. Just the whole airport is just chaotic. Miami's also going through a lot of weather. I'm texting my best friend and she's telling me about how her trip is falling apart and how they're the only flight that was leaving Chicago down to Miami for the whole afternoon and evening. We're sitting there and all of a sudden we get another delay. So now instead of I think it was a 4:30 departure, it's a 5:30 departure, and now we're having negative sit time in Charlotte. So we're they're either gonna have to delay the San Diego flight or recrew it, because at this point, if they don't delay it, we're not making it. Well, we get delayed another hour. So it was just kind of a rolling delay because there was maintenance on the plane. So they were fixing that up, getting it all set to go fly. And we eventually found our pilots and they were telling us that it was maintenance and it would probably leave at XYZ time. And at this point, they took us off of our flight to San Diego. So we're okay, I guess it looks like we're laying over in Charlotte now. And originally on day 3, like I said, it was a 1-2-1. We were supposed to lay over in San Diego for 14 hours and then work a flight to Chicago. And then I was gonna get done at 7:30, so then home at 9. Yeah, so they took us off of that flight and they reassigned us on the last day. Now we are scheduled to lay over in Charlotte and then deadhead to Newark, work from Newark to Dallas, and then deadhead to Chicago and get done around 6:30. And it's not pretty typical at my airline, at least, that when your trip falls apart, you truly get reassigned to work completely different legs that you were not supposed to work beforehand. That usually doesn't happen. So of course my crew and I are okay, we don't want to have to do 2 deadheads tomorrow plus working another flight. We were gonna be going through 3 different bases and it just didn't make sense from how we were looking at our trip, considering we were still delayed and we didn't know what time we were gonna be taking off of Charlotte. And at this point we were gonna have a super short layover in Charlotte. It was gonna be 10 hours. And we're if this gets delayed 2 more hours, we're gonna be on a minimum rest overnight, which is 8 hours. My flight attendant people will understand that that is not that is not a long layover at all. It's barely enough time for you to get some sleep. maybe even eat, shower, and get ready. And there's also, you can't go below 8 hours just because it's like an FAA thing that they have in place. So we were like, we're gonna go illegal for this next leg, or we're gonna have a minimum rest overnight. And if we go illegal for the leg, that means that we won't make that deadhead, so who knows what will happen with our schedule. We just didn't know. So anyways, we finally get the plane, and then we had to wait to board because it was like sitting out having maintenance all day, so it was like pretty warm, and it has to be a certain temperature before we can have passengers come on board. So we finally start boarding, and of course at this point the storms that were supposed to hit Fort Myers are like in full force. The rain was just coming down so hard. So anyways, we finally get boarded, and no weather delays really beyond that because we were waiting for the logbook, so pretty much like the worst of the storm had gone by at that point. So we finally take off, and it was so bumpy going from Fort Myers to Charlotte. Like, we didn't even do service, so it didn't even feel like we were working at all, actually, which is kind of the funny part of it. I'm like, we really only worked that first leg down to Fort Myers the first night. But anyways, we finally make it into Charlotte, and it is 11:30 at night. At this point, we also don't have a hotel room booked yet because we're like in a little bit of an IRAP situation. So sometimes, especially when it's not only happening to your crew, but it's happening to like tons of crews and tons of passengers, it can be really hard for them to find hotels and find them fast. So we call the crew scheduling number for like hotels and limos that we can try to get a hotel that night. We waited on hold for, I want to say like 30 minutes before talking to somebody. And the crew scheduler that we talked to was like, yeah, like I have tons of crews in Charlotte right now I'm trying to find hotels for. So like, let me put you on hold and I'm going to go start calling hotels. So he puts me on hold, and I want to say it's probably another like 30 minutes before he's like back on the line. He's like, hey, I think I found a hotel. I have 3 rooms for you. Which, side note, at this point we only have 3 flight attendants for my crew left because we were 4 flight attendants. And one of the girls on my crew got reassigned to work to Indianapolis. So she like pieced out and went to that flight. And so it's just 3 of us left and our 2 pilots. Well, anyways, we're on hold. He finally finds us 3 rooms, and we had 2 pilots on our crew also that needed rooms, and they were like struggling to get a hotel too with like their crew scheduler that they were working with. So we were like talking to my crew scheduler, and we're like, hey, do you mind calling them and seeing if you can have like 2 more rooms for like our captain and our FO? And then he was like, what FO? Like, I don't have an FO from your crew on our list. So we're like, okay, the FO got like lost in the scheduling system. So we had to like figure out like get him back on track with our scheduler. And so he called the hotel to find another room. And at this point too, we had adopted another pilot who had been sitting on the phone for even longer than we had, who was also trying to find a room. So we were like, okay, we need 3 more rooms. So we're like, do you have 3 more rooms? Our FO actually called the hotel and was like, do you have 3 more rooms? Because we're gonna like talk to our scheduler to like get those, booked for us. We get our crew scheduler to do everything, and we're booking it out to baggage claim, let's go, because the van is coming. And so they had 3 rooms left for the pilots. So all 6 of us like make our way to the crew van. And then side note too, while we were waiting, we also met 4 other Chicago-based flight attendants who were also waiting for a hotel, and they were on hold with scheduling, but there were 4 of them and they were struggling to find a room. And I felt really bad because we had started calling at midnight to get a hotel room, and it took an hour and a half from when I started calling to like when we were at the hotel, and it was like it had been like an hour. But we were talking to those flight attendants, and they had been calling since 11. So they were on hold like a whole hour longer, but I don't know if it was just because we had 3 rooms originally that they were looking for that he was able to find it. I'm not really sure. Or that just our scheduler was calling different hotels than their scheduler was calling. I really have no idea how that looks on the back end. But when we all left, I felt really bad because we were like, our hotel doesn't have any more rooms. They only had 3 more for the pilots. So and we had already like told our pilots we would be asking if they had rooms as well. So I felt really bad because we had to leave them, and I have no idea what time that they like ever ended up getting hotels at too. And they were also trying to come back to Chicago today, so I didn't even see them at the airport when I came the following morning. So I have no idea what happened to them. I'm very curious how long it took them to get a hotel room. But anyways, we finally get to the hotel, and this like pilot that we had like adopted into our crew who was with us was like, how did you get a room? Because I've been on hold for 2 hours and you've only been on hold for like an hour and you got me a room. And I was like, I'm not even joking with you. I manifested it. And he was like, okay. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. Like, I'm not usually like into that type of like manifest your life and your dreams or whatever. But I literally manifested it. I was like, I'm gonna get on the phone with crew scheduling and I'm gonna get a room. And it's not gonna take me like 3 or 4 hours because it is like already midnight at this point and I wanna go to bed. And so he thought that was like kind of funny. And then we get to the hotel and he asked me again, he's like, no, seriously, like how did you get a room? And I'm like, I manifested it, like I'm not even joking with you. And I was like, we've been joking this whole time about manifesting things. And I was like, we manifested that we would not be in San Diego. And look at, we're not in San Diego, we're in Charlotte right now. And then I was like, I was manifesting that we don't work those 3 flights the next day. And now we're not legal for them. So one of the flights actually ended up canceling, I'm pretty sure. But anyways, it was like 1:30 at this point. So I finally get transferred back over to crew tracking because they had not fixed our schedule for Sunday. So we were pretty much like lost in the system at this point. I guess one option would be that we just stay lost until they reassign us something. Sometimes crews do that. They literally just wait until they get reassigned something, but we were like, we want to go home. So I talked to crew tracking and asked them if we could get our sequence repaired. And then the best option was they were just going to put us on a flight back to Chicago. So I deadheaded from Charlotte to Chicago at like 1 p.m. and that's why I got back early. It's so crazy. So I didn't even have to work today. That was like my hectic 3-day, but we actually did end up sitting at the airport for like 6 hours on Saturday in Fort Myers because that's just like how long the maintenance delay happened because they had a lot of different tests they had to run and stuff. So it just kind of kept taking longer than they thought. And then also there was like weather and everything in the area. So it was a crazy 3-day trip, but I got home early and I'm so happy about that. It's so funny that I was thinking on the first day of the trip, I wonder how this will go. Like, will we end up where we were supposed to end up? And I think I just jinxed it because we didn't end up where we were supposed to end up. But it worked out for the better. At the same time, my friend is also on a trip right now and her trip kind of fell apart too. She was the one that was going to Miami. And like I said, they were like the only flight that made it out of Chicago yesterday in the afternoon and evening. And then their schedule got all like fixed around. I ran into another flight attendant friend of mine on the train actually coming home, and he said that like their schedule got all messed up too. Like it was just a mess. Got lots of like DMs too on Instagram from other flight attendants telling me like how their trips were going. But that's just kind of how it is being like a flight attendant or pilot, you know, being someone in the airline industry. Sometimes your trips just like completely fall apart. They don't go the way that you're expecting them to go, or you get reassigned to fly something that you were not expecting. It's just a very, very interesting industry to be part of. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that story, getting a little breakdown of my 3-day trip. But if you did like this video, you can always feel free to give it a thumbs up, and then you can also follow me on Instagram. As always, I'm a lot more active on Instagram and posting a lot of updates when I'm on trips and stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little story time, and I can't wait to see you the next time on the Daily Departure.